its way through the quiet roads of Redditch, the gang sprang into action. Just before 8:30 a.m., the convoy was forced to a halt by masked men in 2 vehicles. They struck fast, ramming the van and smashing the windows. Armed with sledgehammers, the attackers overpowered the guards.
Richard Deakin was a 27-year-old family man living in Chasetown, Staffordshire. He ran a small skip hire business and was known locally as a hard-working, unassuming individual who kept to himself and cared deeply for his 2 young daughters and fiancée, Megan. His life was a picture of normalcy, far removed from the violent underworld that would ultimately claim him. Despite this, on July 5th, 2010, Deakin's life was brutally ended in his bed, a murder that sent shockwaves throughout the quiet community and made headlines nationwide.
He made his way across the garden and entered the property. The hit was carefully planned. Harrison, carrying a sawn-off shotgun, had been watching Deakin's movements for weeks. On this morning, he knew exactly where his target would be.
The chilling aspect of Deakin's murder was that it was captured on CCTV footage installed in his own home, unbeknownst to the killer. The hitman, David Harrison, entered Deakin's property in broad daylight, passing by children's toys and signs of family life, completely unaware he was being recorded. This footage, broadcast publicly by police, became a crucial piece of evidence, allowing investigators to piece together the crime and ultimately bring the perpetrators to justice.
And when the job came his way, he took it without hesitation. Deakin's daily routines were mapped out, and his movements were monitored for weeks. Every detail, from the time of day to the layout of the house, was studied and memorized. They knew when he'd be at home.
David Harrison was a 61-year-old professional hitman with a long criminal history, often described as a journeyman hitman due to his cold, efficient style. On the morning of the murder, he wore a distinctive balaclava and carried a sawn-off shotgun. Harrison entered Deakin's house by climbing over the garden gate, displaying a chilling calmness as he stalked through the garden and into the home. His methodical execution of the crime was terrifyingly detached, shooting Deakin multiple times while he lay in bed, before calmly exiting the house and disappearing into the background.
Search of Harrison's van found blue latex gloves, which looked strikingly similar to the ones seen on the gunman in the CCTV images.
The logistics of the murder were supported by Daryl Dickens, the getaway driver who played a critical role in the hit. Dickens waited nearby in a black Vauxhall Corsa, ready to speed away once the job was done. The duo's coordination was precise. After the shots were fired, Harrison escaped quickly into the car, which was later abandoned in a nearby field in an attempt to throw off police. This level of planning and execution demonstrated a professional approach to a cold-blooded killing.
The true mastermind behind the assassination remained shrouded in mystery. The police had their suspicions, and all signs pointed to one man, John Anslow, a notorious drug kingpin whose name was synonymous with power, fear, and brutality in the Midlands criminal underworld.
Staffordshire police quickly launched a thorough and intensive investigation. Their efforts were boosted when the CCTV footage was aired on BBC's Crime Watch, leading to a breakthrough tip from a former associate of Harrison. This tip was pivotal, as it provided the authorities with the identity of the hitman, allowing them to focus their efforts on tracking Harrison and his accomplice Dickens. Forensics, witness statements, and extensive surveillance work all contributed to building a strong case against the suspects.
Found abandoned in a nearby field. Attention immediately turned to who was behind the hit. This was a targeted, professional job. The police knew they weren't dealing with amateurs, but they had limited leads to follow.
The manhunt for Harrison led police across Europe after he fled the UK soon after the murder. He initially traveled to Copenhagen, then onward to Thailand, attempting to evade capture. However, international police cooperation, including Interpol assistance, ensured that Harrison was apprehended upon his return to Europe. This demonstrated the growing effectiveness of cross-border law enforcement in tackling transnational crime.
There were no signs of a struggle, no obvious clues left behind, just a cold, calculated murder that pointed to the work of a hired killer.
During the trial, prosecutors presented compelling evidence, including the now famous CCTV footage, travel and phone records, and testimonies from witnesses. Despite Harrison and Deakin attempting to deny their involvement, the jury was convinced of their guilt. Both were found guilty of murder. Harrison was handed a life sentence with a minimum term of 37 years, and Deakin received a life sentence with a minimum of 30 years. The verdict brought some closure to Deakin's grieving family.
In 2015, after a lengthy trial, Anslow was cleared of all charges related to Deakin's murder. The true mastermind behind the hit remained a mystery. For Deakin's family, the investigation brought little closure, while Harrison and his accomplice, Daryl Dickens, was sentenced to life in prison.
While the murder itself shocked the community, what puzzled many was the motive behind the killing. Richard Deakin was not known to be involved in gang activity, and his family insisted he had no enemies. Some investigations suggested the killing may have stemmed from a business dispute or mistaken identity, while others speculated it was connected to organized crime feuds in the wider West Midlands area. However, no definitive motive has ever been publicly confirmed.
Daryl Dickens stood trial for the murder of Richard Deakins at Birmingham Crown Court. The prosecution painted a clear picture. Harrison was the hired gun who carried out the hit, while Deakins was his trusted accomplice, responsible for driving the getaway car. The evidence against them was damning. CCTV footage showed Harrison entering Deakin's property, and phone records placed him near the house in the weeks leading up to the murder.
The aftermath of Deakin's murder left a lasting scar on his family and the local community. Megan, his fiancée, spoke publicly about the trauma and the feeling of being left with more questions than answers. The brutal nature of the attack and its execution in a family home highlighted the indiscriminate violence of gangland warfare, raising concerns about the safety of ordinary citizens caught in the crossfire of criminal disputes.
The case seemed destined to go cold. That's when the police turned to the public for help. In December 2010, the murder was featured on an episode of BBC's Crime Watch.
This case also exposed the ruthless nature of contract killings within the UK's criminal underworld. Professional assassins like Harrison operate with chilling efficiency, willing to target individuals regardless of their personal circumstances. The murder demonstrated how deeply embedded and dangerous these networks are, capable of striking in quiet neighborhoods with little warning.
Harrison, carrying a sawn-off shotgun, had been watching Deakin's movements for weeks.
The use of CCTV in this case was pivotal. Installed by Deakin for home security, the cameras inadvertently documented the hitman's every move, providing irrefutable proof of the crime. This technological evidence was a game changer for the police and prosecutors, highlighting the importance of surveillance in solving serious crimes. It also raised questions about privacy and security in the digital age.
On the 11th of February 2011, 2 days after the Liverpool drugs find, West Midlands police officers uncovered half a kilo of 100% pure cocaine.
Richard Deakin's murder fits into a disturbing pattern of gangland executions across the UK. Other notorious cases, such as the killing of John Kinsella by Mark Fellows, also involved highly planned assassinations in broad daylight or public places. These incidents underline the escalating brazenness of gang violence and the challenges faced by law enforcement.
In December 2012, David Harrison and Daryl Dickens stood trial for the murder of Richard Deakin.
The legal proceedings following the arrest of Harrison and Dickens were extensive and closely followed by the public and media. Prosecutors painted a picture of a ruthless contract killing carried out by professionals with no regard for human life. The sentencing reflected the gravity of the crime and served as a warning to others involved in similar criminal activity.
Harrison knew when Deakins would be home, when his guard would be down, and exactly how to strike without alerting anyone. That morning, around 8:30 a.m., Harrison made his move.
Despite justice being served, the wider battle against organized crime continues. Deakin's murder highlighted vulnerabilities within communities and the urgent need for better intelligence, community policing, and support for witnesses. It also reinforced the importance of international cooperation in tackling criminals who attempt to evade justice by crossing borders.
She admitted forming an inappropriate non-physical relationship with Mr. Anslow, but insisted she had never kissed him and nothing sexual had ever taken place. Kirk confessed, however, to having mobile phone contact with the prisoner using a burner phone to communicate with him.
This tragic story remains a stark reminder of the dark realities lurking beneath the surface of seemingly peaceful communities. It is a testament to the courage of law enforcement, the power of technology in modern policing, and the resilience of families affected by such senseless violence.
On the surface, it seemed like justice had been served, but for Deakin's family, the trial brought little closure. Throughout the proceedings, both Harrison and Deakins maintained their innocence. Harrison showed no remorse.
As society reflects on the case, it prompts broader questions about the root causes of gang violence and what can be done to prevent future tragedies. From social programs to tougher law enforcement, the hope is that stories like Richard Deakin's become rarer,